This next video is about site selection, and in the whole property development system, this actually sits here under due diligence, and then you got site selection and all the factors that you must consider before you actually commit to the site, and it's all part of due diligence. So let's have a look at it. You got site selection, and the first thing that you got to look at is location. You got public transport. Is it close to public transport, schools, shopping centers, activity centers? And the reason I've got this as a different site, because this actually applies to a specific site, whereas this portion here, due diligence, and this portion here, this depends upon getting actually to the site. However, when you're actually buying a site for development, you actually have to go through all these steps, and they do form part of your risk mitigation, which we will look at towards the end of and when we get to the end of due diligence. But what I'm trying to say is that do not try and skip these steps. If you go through these steps, after a while this whole thing will come very naturally to you, and you'll be able to look at things and say, oh, that's what's happening, okay, that's what's happening, and then you can move on to the next step fairly quickly. But when you are starting off, I would strongly recommend that even if you're doing due diligence, you come straight to the site. Make sure that you've gone through this, because although due diligence just talks about that site, the how to find your deal section actually gives you all the reasons why you should be in that suburb in the first place. So make sure that you cover this, you take this seriously, and then move into the actual site. So just hopping on to realestate.com.au and finding a site with plans and permits, or finding a site where you can put 4 townhouses is not the right way to go about it, because you will get caught out. You might buy into the wrong suburb, or for whatever reasons. Even if you think that it is right, make sure that you go back and validate all the signals that you are getting about that suburb. So all this is about a broader, this is more macro view, and this is more micro view. So make sure you follow all the steps. So we'll continue with site selection. So in location, we already know this talks about all the stuff that I've spoken about in how to find your next deal. This is about qualifying the suburb, and then again qualifying the site. So all this is now related to the site that you're actually looking at. You got to find out the zoning. We spoke about it in the best possible use. It's the same thing. You got to make sure that it is zoned correctly for what you intend to do on it in future. A lot of people buy a site and don't find out what's actually happening with it. So what zoning does it fall under? And eventually, when they wanna even if they check the zoning, they'll miss out a covenant or an easement or something on that site that prevents them from doing what they actually wanted to do. So physical characteristics, you want to look at soil type. Just remember that I'm not a soil expert, but sandy, I understand this much: sandy or clay soils can require deep concrete piles to achieve adequate support, so you have to remember that. You've got size and shape of the site. It's easier to build on a rectangular and a square site than to an oblong, trapezium, or a triangle. And not a lot of people want to live on a triangle. So just make sure that your target market, who you actually building it for, would they actually buy and live there? All those things will come into play. You got to look at the slope on the site as well. The more slope there is, the more cut and fill you'll need to do on it, and the more retention walls you will need. You'll have to address drainage issues, and all that actually starts adding to the construction cost. So when you're doing your 2-second visa and you want to put in $1,600 per square meters and figure out the construction cost, make sure that if the site's got slope, you allow for that bit extra, because you will miss out. And you might do wrong calculation, and when you actually get the plans and everything, and you go to a builder to get a quote, and you'll get the shock of your life, where he's going to say it's going to cost you that much, and it will kill your deal. So make sure you are aware of all these little things. vegetation, contamination. I was looking at a site a couple of years ago. Massive site, good location, everything good, but it had the site was contaminated, and it had all these I don't know, some diesel drums or whatever was sitting on the site. And I said, look, if we get into this, we might have an issue with the contamination, and I'd rather not get into something that could end up complicated for me later on. And you gotta think of it this way as well. What's the opportunity cost of my money? So yes, of course you can make blah 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 over here, but can I make the same amount of money elsewhere without all these hassles? If I can, I'd rather go there. So that's up to every individual what you want to do with it. So that's part of physical characteristics. Parking, you got to understand, if you got a one bedroom apartment or a townhouse that you're making, you might get a dispensation for parking. If you're making if you've got a two bedder, you need one car. If you're making a three bedder, you may need two cars. And if you're making apartments, the thumb rule for calculating parking space for apartments in Victoria is 0.75 bays per unit for apartments which are less than 60 square meters, and 1 bay per unit for apartments which are greater than 80 square meters. So you've got to understand that these are, if you're not sure of this, again, get in touch with your architect, and he or she will explain it to you. Office or commercial space, 4 car bays per 100 square meters. Now you can get a dispensation for all of this if you are located right next to I'll just put that here. You can get dispensation if you are located close to a public transport like a train station or something. If located close to public transport. Now you might not be able to get away with all of it, but you might be able to get some dispensation in car park spots that you have to allow for within your building or within your premises if you're right next to a train station. So some councils allow it, some councils don't allow it. Especially for larger developments, there is a chance that you can get dispensation. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm trying to get one right now for a project that I'm working on. Setbacks, building setbacks or building lines, you got to understand this is how far away that it all depends upon neighborhood character. So if you open Google Maps, I'll just give you an example. If you open Google Maps, I don't know, maybe put Glen Waverley, Victoria, and I click here, and all I want to do is, the reason I'm explaining that, first, to some people you might understand what setback is, and the reason I'm explaining that 4 years ago, I came across a lot of people, they didn't understand what a setback was. And initially when I started, I didn't understand that either. So I had to educate myself. So see how far these houses are, and they're all in line. That's a setback. And that's actually determined by neighborhood character. Now, the council might have something sticking out here, and if you're building something new over here, you might be able to argue. They might give you a dispensation to put a garage here, but not the whole building. So all these things matter. These are all setbacks. So that's what it is. Easements, you got to understand what are the special restrictions. You can't build over them, or you might get a dispensation like a build over easement permit. Or an area, basically easements are areas that has to be accessible by authorities. Mostly properties have it running to the side of their boundary line somewhere, either back or on the side, and you're basically not allowed to build a habitable structure on them. When you are looking at site, there are sections where you'll have to look at section 32 or the disclosure statement and find out if the site's got any covenants on them. So just be aware of that. Traffic flows, you need to find out from the traffic engineer the inflow and the outflow from the site. How's that going to impact? If you're trying to put up a huge building at a corner section, and the corner section is actually a major intersection and a lot of traffic's there, you're going to have issues with putting a lot of apartments on them, because each apartment might come with one car, and there's gonna be the in and out, the site access and egress from that site, and you will have to allow for that. So you'll have to consult the traffic engineer to give you a traffic report of what actually you can do on the site. And then there are council developers contributions, what the council's what the development contribution is going to be. Basically, the way that works is, I think the easiest way to understand is this: council's got an infrastructure, and that infrastructure is really good, and you've got one house on the site at the moment, and all the amenities of the house are actually hooked up with the council infrastructure. So all the sewer, all the water assets from the water authorities, they're all linked to your site. But now it used to be just one house over there, and now you're putting in 4 townhouses. So the pressure on that infrastructure increases, and that's how the council contributions come into play, because now you've got to pay for, usually in Victoria, of all the sites that I've done, they've actually calculated that. So for example, if I'm going to put 4 townhouses, it's going to be 4% of the land value. If I'm going to put, if one was already there and I was going to put 3 extra on it, so I'll be only paying 3% of it, not 4%, because one was already there. So that's how council contributions, they've got complex formulas, and I'm not an expert at this, so you should get in touch with, when it's time to find out, you should get in touch, get on the phone, give your council a call, tell them that you're considering buying a site, and that's what you plan on doing, what sort of council contributions you should allow for in your feasibility, and they will tell you what you should allow for.